Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to make a start now. My name's Brendan Mills. I work here at Stock in the Channel. My main role is to look after the distribution side of the business. So I'm normally the guy on the phone to the West Coast and the Tech Datas and Ingram Micros of this world. I've been with the company now for knocking on 6 years, so probably one of the more experienced members of the team. We've not done these webinars for some time. But we figured it was time to start them up again because it's a good education for people that use the system already, and for those that are perhaps considering using the system in some more detail. We've got a few points that we'll go through today. I'd encourage you to ask any questions via the chat or the questions section. Because of the number of people involved in the call today, everybody's muted, otherwise it would be very noisy. So I'll stop throughout the course of the presentation or the webinar and answer any questions that have been entered in the text area. Okay, so for those of you that already use Stock in the Channel, this page is probably fairly familiar to you. Stock in the Channel primarily is involved in taking data feeds from distribution, bringing them into the system, and then allowing you to see that data in a number of ways. Hang on. There you go. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, so this view should be quite familiar to you. Primarily in standard view, or what we call standard view, is the ability to manage your incoming feeds. So for data feed export, it's all about the flow of data. So information comes from distribution into Stock in the Channel, and then you're able to manipulate that information before it is exported out to a third-party system, be it an e-commerce website or a back office system. So for those of you that are involved in the purchasing or the setup, you would probably be using the Manage Distributors screen. And on here you can plug in your incoming feeds, your information coming in from distribution. We're obviously logged in on a demo account, which has visibility of feeds from a number of suppliers. We have a whole rostrum, if you like, of what we would call public distributors, who are quite easy to set up, and it's very simple to add these distributors. If you have an account with them, you're then able to request access to pricing within Stock in the Channel. For those of you that haven't done this before, we're just going to pick on bits and PCs, and it's quite simple. When you click on a distributor, you get a page that contains some information about them, including contact information, and you have a button up here that says set up pricing, and in here we can just put in an account number if you have one, and then hit the apply button. Now if we go back to the distributors view all page, we can see straight away that bits and PCs are in this list, and we have active visibility of pricing. Most distributors take a little bit longer to set up than that. Normally because they're dealing with customer specific pricing, so it's your own pricing from distribution, and the feeds may take a short while to be set up. Okay, so what you would see is any requests that you've made that haven't been approved would appear down here in the pending applications area, and until they're approved, and then they'll move straight away into the green active distributors area. It's quite important for anybody that's relying on this data, if you're exporting the information to a third-party system or e-commerce site, that you keep an eye on this table. It tells you here the last time that we imported the data and the last time that the data was updated. So if you see any of your distributor feeds have a status of old data, or the import hasn't run for quite some time, this normally means that there's a problem with the file. Perhaps the distributors stopped writing the file for whatever reason, or our access to the file has been revoked. This can happen perhaps if you, heaven forbid, if you're ever put on hold by a distributor, they might turn off the provision of the feed and then forget to turn it back on. So this is your responsibility to keep an eye on this list and make sure that it's all active. Some companies will obviously have warehouse inventory of your own, or perhaps you work with a distributor that's not in our big list of all of the 140 odd suppliers that we've got plugged in. This can still be, these suppliers can still be included, or your own inventory can still be included. We have an interface for plugging in what we call private data feeds. So the products that you upload into Stock in the Channel on your own account and as a private feed will only be visible to yourself and the people that share your account with you. So it's very useful for, perhaps you work with a partner in Europe that does some special pricing on hard drives or something, and you're able to plug that supplier in, and it's then in the system with all of your other suppliers, and you can use that data when you come to export. Quite an important area is the user manager on the account. You can always get back to your account page by just clicking on your name in the top right hand corner, and in here you will see the user manager. If you're an admin user or you have the permission, you will be able to access this screen where you can add additional users. It's quite important that the people within your organization who need to do certain jobs within Stock in the Channel actually have the correct permissions. So if we click on Tony Mayers, it's the owner of Stock in the Channel, he could have different permissions. The permission to actually plug in additional distributors is called Manage Distributors, not surprisingly, and there's also one here for Manage Web Store, which is the area that we're going to take a look at next. So only people that have a tick in these two boxes will be able to manipulate the data that is being exported from the system, or in this instance manage the distributors that are being plugged in to your Stock in the Channel account. So that's the real sort of whistle-stop tour of what we would call standard view. This is the version of Stock in the Channel that most reseller clients have access to. I'm going to take some questions now. The first one we have is from John Carson. We have multiple suppliers that sell some of the same items. When one of our customer buys an item, how do we know which supplier the price came from? Well, okay, so if you're exporting products to your web store, actually it will use the lowest cost price, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. When you come to purchase the product, that's a different element altogether. So you would typically log into Stock in the Channel, see who's the most cost-effective supplier for the order, and then place the order with those guys. But unless you're doing order process with us, the full order automation service, which isn't really the subject for today's session, but is useful nevertheless. So we offer full quote to order automation services as an upgrade. Web Store is kind of what we would call the data export functionality, but there's a whole load of different services that we offer. If you're using order process with us, effectively Stock in the Channel will select the most cost-effective method of fulfilling the order for you, taking into account carriage charges and surcharges, and multiple delivery charges if it decides to split the order between two suppliers. Simon David asks, Web Store can setup of a private feeds be shown to only certain customer groups on the front end of the website? There's plans to introduce something called restrictive catalogs. It's not quite there yet within Magento, but there's ways and means that you could handle that, and we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in a while. Okay, so just going to move on now to the data export interface. We call these internally, we call them stores areas, but you can have as many of these attached to your individual Stock in the Channel account as you wish. So we have two here, one called IT and Toner and one called IT only. So we have different data exports that we use. We're going to start off by looking at the IT only one. This can be renamed, so it could be perhaps the name of your website. We set this for you, or you can edit it yourself as well. The first page that you land on we call it the dashboard. This is really just an overview of what's happening in the data export that we're generating for you. So you can see here the markups area. You have the ability to manage and create as many markup rules as you like. You can have an unlimited number of markup rules. There's a default markup and a highest markup. We'll look at each of these areas in some more detail, but this really is just an overview of what's happening with your incoming feeds, how many are being exported and which categories are being included. At the moment, this is what we would term a very vanilla stores area, so nothing has been changed from the default settings. That you would inherit this, so if you was to start a new store with us today or a new export with us today, you would get our default category structure and default brands, and everything would be turned on. And then it's for you to turn stuff off that you don't want. The main thing that happens in the stores area really is the process of elimination. It's product selection, which items you want to be included in the data feed that we generate and export for you, and which items you don't. The first place to start for most people tends to be distributors. So if we click on the blue distributors button, what you'll notice whenever you're doing anything in what we call the stores areas, you can do a search and you will see similar results to what you see in our main stock in the channel view, but the products that within the results will only be the items that are offered by the distributors that you have visibility of pricing for. That's quite a long sentence, so I'll break it down for you. You will only see products in search results from the suppliers that you have plugged in to stock in the channel. In here we can see the list of the distributors that are active on this account. Bits and PCs you can see are there, but they're not ticked because they've only just been added. As you saw, I added them a few moments ago. And the first thing that happens on this screen really is that you may say, okay, well, I don't want to include this distributor, this distributor, this distributor, this distributor, and this distributor. So you can just turn off distributors that you don't want to include in the data export element of stock in the channel. You will still have visibility of your cost prices from them within standard view, but their products will not be considered at all in any way when we're calculating sell prices, when we're deciding which products to export to your system, to your third-party system. So this is the first element of product selection really, and typically people might work with 4, 5, 6 distributors for export, but they might have visibility of 20. This is quite normal. So the next thing that people tend to do is to go to brands and say, okay, well, by default, every single brand from all of the distributors that you've got connected are set to be included. But then you might say, actually, only, I don't want AF, I don't want these brands. So again, we're just eliminating products by conditions. The first one being distributor, the next one being brands. And you can go through A to Z. It's really straightforward, this area. Just turn off brands that you don't want, as many as you want, or you can come at it the other way, which is to select none, and that will untick everybody, and then you can go the other way and just tick the ones that you do want. And this will dramatically reduce the number of products that are set to export. The next criteria tends to be categorization, and again, you will inherit our default category structure at the start, but you're not tied to this. The categories that you export and the way that they appear in the export is completely up to you. So typically, if people are using this data in an e-commerce web shop, and you're using top navigation, so you've got your categories across the top or your products navigation across the top, it's unlikely that you're going to want as many top level categories as you will start with here, and you probably want to keep the names quite short as well. So typically what people do is they come in and they say, right, audio and home theatre, we're going to rename that to AV, and you just rename it and save. And it might be that you say, well, there's a lot of computing categories here. We're going to add a new category, and we're going to rename that to computing. And you'll notice that the this category is blue, and that means that you know it's a category that you've created rather than one of our default categories. The ones that we have already pre-populated with products will always be yellow. Doesn't matter if you rename them or change the order of the categories, they'll always stay yellow, and you'll know that that's actually a stock in the channel category rather than one that you've created yourself. What we're going to do now is say, right, this computing category has got nothing in it, it's just empty, it's an empty folder at the moment, but we can just drag and drop all of the categories that we consider to be computing related and just put them in there. Computer components, you get the idea. So and you would just continue to do that kind of work really until you end up with a much smaller, more manageable list. You might put. So you can change the order. You can literally just drag and drop these. You might say, well, I want that to be moved somewhere else. You can move the categories wherever you want within the tree, and you can rename them. You can even say, okay, within computer components, I don't want CPU holders. Well, you can just turn that category off. It's still there, but it's grayed out, and it won't be included in, none of the products within that category will be included, and the category itself won't exist in the data export that we provide. Okay, so yeah, this is really the main hub of managing your category structure within stock in the channel. Okay, going to take any questions that we've got now. What is the difference between pounds and percentage uplift? I think that's from Nick Barrett. I'm guessing you were referring to this page on the distributor screen. Cost price uplift is not the same as markup. We've got a separate area for what we would call markup or margin rules. This area can be used where you have the same product available from multiple suppliers, but those same suppliers charge you different rates for carriage. So you've got a product that you can buy for £100 from one distributor, £102 from another distributor, £105 from a third distributor. Same item, same brand, same everything. The guy that you think is the cheapest isn't necessarily the cheapest if he charges you more for carriage. So what a lot of people will do with this area is they will say, okay, well, I'm going to set my target carriage charge that I'm prepared to pay distribution at £10, and you may pass that on to your customer. So you charge your customer £10, and then delivery's neutral for you. However, Avnet turn around and say, no, we're not going to wear that. We're going to charge you £12. So what you do is you put a £2 uplift on the cost prices from Avnet. So even if they're £1 cheaper on that one product, actually they're not. They're £1 dearer because they're going to charge you £2 more to deliver it than everybody else. So this is quite important because when we get to the point where we're selecting the cost price to use to calculate your sell price, you want to make sure it's taken into account, that kind of thing. You can also use this, in that instance you would use the pound option. You can also use this if you're purchasing products perhaps in Europe and the feed that's coming in from your European supplier is always in euros and they can't provide a feed in dollars, where you can use this to convert the prices into pounds. Just do a percentage uplift rather than a pounds uplift. Or if you get a rebate perhaps from a particular supplier, if you hit a particular value and they say, okay, well, if you spend 20 grand with me this month, you get 3% back, well, you might decide to give 1.5% of that rebate straight away to the customer to help you get there. Hopefully that answers that question, Nick, for you. If we have, so I've got Tahir Farouk, if we have 2 items from 2 different suppliers in a single order and they charge different shipping fee, we have charged a single fee, how can we solve this issue? Yeah, it's never a perfect solution. So typically what you'll find is there will be a few instances where you've got a basket that a supplier has that a customer has put together and you can't buy the whole basket from one supplier. That's the way of the world, and it does happen. But there are obviously the broadliners out there. So you've got the likes of Ingram and Tech Data, and these guys have got an extensive range, Exertis, and there's a good chance that it may be that you pay a little bit more for the items, but it works out cheaper over the cost of the basket than paying 2 carriage charges. So there's always a trade-off, but it's a nice problem to have for sure. If you fill a basket with 5 items and you've got to pay 2 lots of carriage to get it there, that's not the end of the world. So yeah, it can be an issue. So we're going to move on now to the next section, which is stock threshold, end of life, and price rules. Oh, can you uplift the cost price by a negative amount, pounds or percentage? You can do a minus, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let me save that. Just refresh. Or in this instance, point minus 2. Yes, is the answer. It will let you enter a minus percentage or minus pound sign into the value. Yeah, for the rebate. Yep, that makes sense. Sorry, Manish has been asking about that. So we're going to move on now to the dashboard. Back to the dashboard. The easiest way to get there. There's some breadcrumbs that you'll see underneath the top navigation. It tells you where you are within the system at this point. So we're on the Manage Distributors page, but we can click this link and it takes us back to the dashboard. And on the dashboard, we're going to go into the Manage Markups area. And in here, you can first of all, there is the final part of product selection. So we sort of touched on that already. Product selection, you're basically taking all of the products from all of your suppliers and then you're narrowing down the items by removing distributors, removing brands, removing categories that you're not interested in. The final part of product selection is something called stock threshold. And what this means is that you may decide to not include products where there are less than 5 available in distribution. You might do this because you're using these stock values to populate eBay or Amazon or something along them lines, where you absolutely have to deliver if someone orders, because otherwise it's your negative feedback, your reputation is damaged. So some people can set this, some people set this at 10, 20. I've seen people set it at 0, and you would do that because you want people to have visibility of what might be available and be able to find whatever they want on your website. Obviously, if you do that, then it actually enables another section here, which is called days before end of life. So naturally, products do go out of stock from time to time in distribution, or go into constraint for a period of time, and it might be that you set a days to end of life to be 14. So what this means is, if a particular product has been stock value 0 for more than 14 days, it then gets removed from your catalog. If it's only been 10 days, it's still on the files that we publish, albeit that we will export a stock value of 0. So yeah, this is quite useful for managing products that are out of stock but likely to come back. So yeah, that's stock threshold. So as I say, that's really the last part of product selection. So what we've done so far is we've eliminated a whole load of products, and we're down to 50,000 lines left that are going to be included in the data feed that we generate every morning for your website or your back office system. The next thing to do is to put prices against all of those items. Now, depending on the export structure that you take from stock in the channel, we have a couple that you can choose from. We have what's called a flat file, which is pretty simple. It'll open in Excel. It'll be lots of columns. It's a CSV file actually, but you can obviously open that within Excel. It'll have lots of columns for different fields, different values. And the flat file is good and easy to look at. It's quite a heavy. It can be quite a heavy file if you've got a lot of products. And there will be 4 or 5 columns in that file per distributor that you decide to include. It does limit you to 5 distributors, the 5 cheapest distributors. So you can have first cheapest, second cheapest, third cheapest distributor on the day for each given product. And it will include the distributor part number, the distributor product title, the distributor stock level, distributor price. So that's why and there's one other. So that's why you'll end up with so many columns in the file. The other format that we export is what's called a relational database structure. This is the format that we actually use ourselves when we're importing content and products into the Magento e-commerce platform, for which we have our own plugin that we have developed. The relational database structure is without the limitation of 5 distributors, because it doesn't insist on having one file. So there'll be a file there called distributor stock and prices, and the same product can be in that file multiple times for different distributors. So you can basically take all of your suppliers that are being fed into stock in the channel and take the stock value and the pricing for every single one of those distributors in the relational structure. So we've limited our portfolio down to 50,000 products, and we now need to put a sell price on those 50,000 products. What the system will do is it will take all of the cost prices from the suppliers that have stock available. So the cheapest guy hasn't got stock, it moves to the next cheapest guy. So yeah, it uses the lowest cost price from your suppliers that have stock, and then it applies a markup percentage. And you can create as many rules here as you like to determine that percentage. You can see some rules here at the bottom, which are, well, these two are purely about price. So this one says anything costing from £1 to £10, put a markup of £5. Add £5 to the cost, and that's your sell price. The next one says £10 and a penny to £50, make 10%. Okay, so you can start to get an idea of the rules that you can make. You can create rules, an unlimited number, so we could say we're looking for, and by the way, the category structure is the one that we've designed, so we've now got computing, select subcategory, computers, and all-in-one PCs, and we want the HP branded ones, costing between £200 and £280. I want to make a percentage markup of 8%. Save. So that rule has gone straight to the top of the list, and you can put it anywhere in the list you wish. The relevance of the order of the rules is quite important. If there are 2 rules in this list that could apply to a product, only the one highest or the one higher up the list will be used. So effectively we get the products that have passed all of your product selection process. We start at the top and we run down this list until we find a rule that can be applied to that product, so it meets all of the criteria that have been selected. So looking at this rule here, the £10 and a penny to £50, if that was here, anything that has a cost price range of £10 to £50 will not get past this rule, even if it's an IP phone from free telecom. This rule will effectively not get used. So that's why the order is quite important. Typically, if you're creating rules that just look at price, they should always be at the bottom, because then your product specific or brand specific or category specific rules can be higher up and be used preferentially. Any questions about price rules? Now's a good time. Okay, see if we have anything. Customer specific prices. So I suppose a product will be imported in, not removed from Magento. It will now show any supplier have to remove manually. Okay, so someone just asked about end-of-life products being pushed into Magento. If you set the stock value to 0 and the product goes end of life, it will stop being on our files. Effectively, the product selection process basically says if it doesn't meet the criteria, don't put the product on the file. This isn't really about Magento today. This is more about the interface, which can be used to control your feeds going into any solution. But to answer that question, our Magento plugin has two types of import. It has what's called a stock import and a product or a full import. So stock and price import and then a full import. And the way that we've created the plugin, it runs on a cron job, which is an automated task to run every day. So every day it runs a stock and price import, which is a nice fast import. It's looking only at 2 columns of data for stock and price effectively, and distributor stock and price. And it's just importing those values. So if a product has been in your data set and it's created in Magento, and then it goes end of life, what's going to happen is that product will be set to 0 stock because the product is no longer on your file. When you run your full catalog import, at that point, which generally people run once a week, at that point the product can be removed, but until then it will be set to 0 stock if your plugin's configured correctly. Manish asked about the £5 uplift on cost price. Yeah, absolutely. So with our, let me just get that screen back up. With our markup rules, they used to be limited to percentage only, but as some people pointed out, if you've got very low value items, even if you put 300% on, you actually still don't want the order because it's such a negligible profit value. So yeah, we allow people to add a pounds markup as well as a percentage markup to the rules, and that's quite a new development, I would say, in the last 6 months maybe that's been added. So it's quite good because some people were just saying if the cost price is very low, I don't want it on my website, exclude it completely. You don't need to do that anymore. You can now actually include those items. Okay. The customer specific pricing. Okay, so for Magento, again, we have a plugin which allows you to actually handle customer specific pricing within Magento. You can have what are called customer price groups. You can set them up in Magento, so you might have an education group to which you add all of your schools and colleges, and you have a price file or a price structure that you've generated just for your education customers. You add your customers to the price group, and then we're able to actually populate a separate price tier, if you like, within Magento for you. So down here we have customer groups, and what you're able to do is to create, well, there you go, there's the education customer group, or you can create a new group, and you can create separate rules just for this group of customers. Now what would happen is that when we export the pricing, you would get additional columns in your price feed that would be called education customer. that would be the header, for example. And if you only set a couple of price rules here, it's not going to cover every single product that you're exporting. So the default pricing will populate that column also. But if there's a particular product that you want to give individual pricing for, you can, and you can even do it down at a SKU level where you can type in, you know, an actual part number and set a markup price, absolute price. You know, so you could say I'm going to sell that product at £100, and that's absolute price. That's not a percentage or an uplift. That's an absolute price. So you can do absolute price. You can do, you know, on a product, on a price range, on anything, and this can be client specific. It can be client group specific. So there's different ways that you can cook this really. So Manish is saying he's still confused on markups versus setting a sell price by marking up. If you want to go into that a little bit more detail, you know, by all means give us a call. But we'll take that offline because there's quite a few people on the call, and I don't want to hold up the presentation anymore. So yeah, you can have price groups, and these can be you know, as many as you want really, and you can create new ones, you know, as you like. You know, this is this has been around for a little while. We have the plugin in Magento for it, but obviously if you're taking the data out into another system as well, you're still able to use this functionality to manage different pricing for different clients. Okay, so I'm just reading some more questions. So the main price rules also affect the customer group. Yes, so Simon asked, do the main price rules also affect the customer price groups? So as I say, what would happen is that you would get a specific price for certain products, or certain products really, because ultimately you're setting a price on a product. You might be using a category and a brand to set the price, and to make the selection of what products get that price gets applied to. But yeah, you're setting the price on a product, and if a price isn't set within the price group or the customer group, it falls back to the price in the default price tier. Just to finish this section off, if I hate seeing this global markup set to 0, this is your safety net. Chances are you're going to miss something, to be honest, unless you create cost price rules that go all the way up to millions. There's going to be a product that isn't getting an uplift somewhere in there. So you can put this at 20%, and this is your safety net. So what happens is, say we get all of the products in from distribution, we run down the list of products here, of rules here. We get to the bottom and we haven't found a rule that applies to the product. We default to this instead. So we still apply a 20% uplift in this instance to the products. It prevents you selling anything at cost, which I'm sure no one really wants to do unless you're on some sort of wonderful rebate scheme. Okay, so any further questions on that section? Okay, in that case we're going to move on now to take a look at product management, specifically individual products. So Stock in the Channels gives you a lot of very powerful options for managing product selection, as we've already discussed, and categories. I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle now. We're going to go to a distributor. I'm going to pick tech data. So we're now viewing, when it loads, the available products from tech data. Within store view, there are two ways to see the search results. You can have, or two views effectively. You have what's called a condensed result, which shows you the markup and the price, the marked up price, and then you also have the expanded results, which looks a bit more familiar to what you'd see in standard Stock in the Channel. So in this instance, you get you know, a thumbnail. You would see the suppliers, but we've only selected tech data, yeah, to view products and tech data. The reason I've done this is because when you come at it from an angle of selecting a distributor, you may also get this filter here, this navigation filter on the left, which you won't have seen before in standard view. It's not available, but on the incoming feed from tech data, we pick up a column that's called category. So it's what tech data categorized the product as. Now, you'll probably be aware that, you know, much as we try hard and we work with partners like IceCat to provide you with content, images, technical specs, descriptions, categorization, it's not a perfect solution because products in the IT industry come and go really quickly, and there's always a lag while we wait for our partners to catch up with the content. Actually, I'm going to come unstuck here because I think they've done a really good job. Oh no, yeah, there we go. So there are a whole load of uncategorized products. So there is a category in stock on the channel called uncategorized products, and I've just taken the tech data range of 106,000 products and I filtered it by showing me the ones that are not categorized by IceCat. However, we still have down here the distributor's categorization for these items. And what we may do is now say, okay, 3D consumables. I'm going to filter by 3D consumables, and we can straight away. So we have now started off with 100,000 products, and we filtered it down to 13 by looking at uncategorized products from tech data that they call 3D consumables. Actually, they're all out of stock, but that's neither here nor there. What we have the option to do now is to actually select all of the items. So let's put a tick box in all of these. You could say all of them apart from this one. Don't know why, but you might just not want to include everything. And then you have the option here for bulk edit. And you've got quite a few things you can do in the bulk edit. You could apply an image. So we might say main image, I want to use an image. You can paste the image URL in here. Or you could say I want to sell all of these products at a markup percentage of 8%, ignoring these, you know, the rules on the markup area. You could say I want to manually override the stock level on these so that it always shows as 25, even if the distributor's got 0. I want to show 25. You could also say I want to move these products into the category printers and supplies, printing supplies, and maybe there's not a category yet for this, but you might want to put them in ink cartridges for now. They probably, you could have just created a category called 3D supplies, whatever you like, but you can move these products. If I hit save now, it's going to actually it's going to do all of that, so I'm going to do it now actually. Okay, so this is updated, and now because we've got the uncategorized category selected, we're not seeing them results anymore. So those products have been moved. We could also create a data quality rule. Data quality rules are very powerful. Bulk edits only happen to the products that you have selected. So if you tick 50 products and you bulk edit them, those products will get changed right now. Data quality rules are another level. These are rules that happen every night, and they apply to products that are here now in the system and products that are added in the future. So if you look at how we've got to this set of search results, next week Tech Data add another product that they call a 3D consumable. You want it to do the same thing as the ones that we've just edited. So you make the same selection. So we say categorization, copy the product or move the product to the category, printer supplies, wherever we want to put it, print, it doesn't really matter, but you can find the category and then save. And that's actually created a rule that will run every night. So it'll pick up new products that are added to the system. And rules, the thing to remember about rules, it's how you get to the results that is remembered. So we could have started off with a search for iPad, and got, when it wants to load. Yeah, so we've got 1,372 results, quite a lot, and then filtered them by the ones that are costing 500 to £1,000 and are fundamentally in stock. And now we're down to 56 results. Create data quality rule and copy these products to category. In fact, I'm just going to copy these products to data storage, wherever you want, save. Now, it doesn't actually make that happen right now because data quality rules only run overnight. So that's one thing you do need to remember. However, tomorrow, these products will appear in two categories. They'll be in the tablets category and the one that we've just created the rule to move them into. So this is quite often used by people who have a web store and they want specific products on their homepage perhaps, or to appear in multiple categories, and they don't want to have to remember to activate the same functionality for new products every time something's added to the system. Okay, so that's bulk edits and data quality rules. We're coming towards the end of this session now, so if you've got any questions, please do ask them, because I'm going to have a last roundup of questions and answers before the end. There's one section more that I want to introduce you to, which is the publish functionality. So every morning we take all of the products from all of your suppliers. We eliminate the items that you've selected to be left out via your product selection of brands and categories and so on. We apply your markup rules and we generate a data set that we deliver to an FTP location on stock in the channel, to which only you have the FTP access. However, during the course of the day, or normally you want to change something, you go in and make your changes, and quite often when you edit something you want to see that reflected straight away. So you can come here and there's an option that says publish. When you hit the publish button, it'll remind you, hey, this happens automatically every morning. If you want to see your changes reflected now, please press the publish button. So you can hit the publish now button, and then stock in the channel will write a new data set right there and then for you. We do limit you, we ask you not to do this every day, 10 times a day, because it's quite intensive process, and if everyone's doing it, stock in the channel starts to run slow. It starts to feel the pain a little bit. So it really should be used for as and when you change something and you want to see the results straight away. Obviously, if you're using the data inside Magento, although you've published that data, it hasn't necessarily refreshed inside your third-party system. You will still need to tell Magento or your ERP or whatever it is where the data is being used to come and collect that data and suck it in. So but this gives you the flexibility to write a new data set as and when you want to. Yeah, so that's really it. So for today, so I'm going to go on to questions now. We've got not very many. With IceCat, I believe you guys don't show all fields available. IceCat have more headers. I'm not quite sure which fields you're referring to. I'm not quite sure what do you mean by that, Kiz. Ali. So we partner with IceCat primarily. Do you mean categories? It could be that you're referring to categories. There are some IceCat categories that we don't have set to import. We're umming and ahhing about changing that. IceCat will describe anything they're paid to describe, to be perfectly blunt, and we don't have the baby clothes category, for example, marked for import into stock in the channel. And there are others. There are certain categories within IceCat that we haven't selected to import. Jury's out on that. One argument says, well, if if a distributor offers those products, we should import the category, and we may be changing that in the not too distant future. Yeah, so any other questions for me? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for your time and attendance. It's quite a lot of you have come along today, and most of you have listened to the end, which is means that I must have been okay. We value your feedback, we value your business very much. So there is a very short questionnaire at the end of this. When you close the presentation, it'll just be asking you a couple of short questions. One of the things that we haven't asked on that questionnaire is if there are any other services that you would be interested in learning about. So if there are, for example, about our web store, about our turnkey web store, or about order automation or quote generation, just drop your account manager an email, say, hey, can you do a webinar for that? And if enough people ask for it, then we'll do it. Thank you very much again for your time, and yeah, please feel free to contact us if you think of something later. Thank you.